Thank you very much, Michael, for the introduction. So yeah, I'm going to present one of the options in recurrent glioblastoma, which is reirradiation. And I thank the scientific committee for giving me the opportunity to present this option. As you know, reirradiation is one of the treatment options for recurrent glioblastoma, and since 10 years ago now, there are several retrospective studies on reirradiation showing a good tolerance. However, there is an heterogeneity in terms of population, because these studies described high-grade glioma, glioblastoma, and also low-grade glioma, and also a huge heterogeneity in terms of dose and fractionation. Some studies use normal fractionation, others hypofractionated stereotactic radiotherapy with 5 to 10 gray per fraction, and also some use one big dose of irradiation, 14 to 20 gray, as a radiosurgery. So the mean OS that we obtain with reirradiation in these different studies around 9 months, and the mean PFS is around 5 months. So of course, these results needs to be improved. And for improving the results of reirradiation, we can ask several questions. The first one is what is the way to improve it? The second is, what are the patients to reirradiate? And also, is there a possibility to have a prediction of response to this reirradiation? So how to improve reirradiation efficacy? By two main ways. The first one is to increase the radio sensitization. And the second one, of course, is to better define the targets that we are going to reirradiate. So for the first one, so increasing the radiosensitization of the recurrent glioblastoma, we know that irradiation, and more particularly high dose per fraction, can act through different effects. The first one are direct effects on tumor cell death and different mitotic cell death, apoptosis, autophagy, and senescence. But what is important to know is that hypofractionated radiotherapy, or SRS, induce mainly indirect effects. The first one is to induce above 10 gray endothelial cell apoptosis through acid sphingomyelinase pathway, and then leading to tumor cell death. And as you know, oncogenic factors like VEGF or FGF2 are factors which will inhibit this endothelial cell apoptosis. And one of the ways to optimize stereotactic irradiation or hypofractionated reirradiation, of course, is, we will see later, to target these factors. And the second indirect effect is, of course, the immune effect, because we know that such dose induce presentation of tumor antigen to T cells, that radiotherapy increases T cell infiltration and recurs CD8 T cells, and of course, radiotherapy and high dose per fraction opens the blood-brain barrier in a few hours, allowing checkpoint inhibitors penetration. So first way to increase the efficacy of this reirradiation is to associate, of course, this such reirradiation with an inhibitor of VEGF. And for that, several studies have been performed and published, and around at least 12 studies have been published combining reirradiation of glioma with bevacizumab, and more than 25 studies of reirradiation without bevacizumab have been published. And I show you here a recent publication comparing these different studies and results obtained with and without beva. And as you can see here, usually associating bevacizumab and reirradiation, and you can see here also the heterogeneity of the fractionation. Usually there is an increase of the median overall survival around 11 months compared to 9 or 10 months for reirradiation alone, and also a small increase of median PFS with the adjunction of bevacizumab. What about optimizing by immunotherapy, optimizing re-irradiation and hypofractionated irradiation, and why? The first explanation is with the preclinical explanation. We know it, and it's not in glioma model. It's on, for instance, lung cancer or breast cancer. It has been published by the same team in US, that hypofractionation, so for instance, 3 fraction of 8 or 9 gray, is much better than high dose of SRS using 20 gray for inducing an immune effect and an abscopal bystander effect. Indeed, regarding of the fractionation, we will induce a total different biological effect, while an hypofractionation is going to induce cytosolic DNA, and then through the gasting pathway, so there is a DNA sensor, and then leading to the activation of the immune cell death. And as you can see here, so a pro-immune microenvironment, activated microenvironment, that leading to an immune cell death and an abscopal effect. At the contrary, in the opposite, when we use a high dose per fraction, like 20 gray in radiosurgery, it's totally different, because there will be to an expression of the exonuclease TRX1, which is going to inhibit the expression of the cytosolic DNA, and then leading to an anergy, so no immune effect. So the best fractionation seems to be an hypofractionation. What about the combination and the timing between the immunotherapy, checkpoint inhibitor, and irradiation? There is a lot of clinical studies, retrospective studies, not on glioma, but on brain mets, that has been published, and comparing a concurrent administration of irradiation and checkpoint inhibitor with a sequential administration. And globally, all the studies clearly showed that the combination, the concurrent administration, is superior, is much better than the sequential administration in terms of overall survival and PFS. What about glioma? In preclinic, there have been some, but very few studies in preclinic on glioblastoma, and this one showing 8 or 9 years ago now that the association of an anti-PD-1 with 10 gray stereotactic irradiation on a glioblastoma in a rat model lead to the abrogation of the glioblastoma through the CD8 T cells. So, of course, there is a rationale to for re-irradiation to combine probably hypofractionated irradiation with immunotherapy. So this combination must also be associated with bevacizumab. Why? Because 8 years ago it has been published and shown that abnormal vascularization, like we have in glioblastoma, lead to an immunosuppressive tumor microenvironment with mainly a phenotype of M2 like tumor-associated macrophage, and that using anti-angiogenic therapy like VUG, like bevacizumab, could lead to, of course, a normalization of the vascularization and an immunosupportive tumor microenvironment. So the combination of re-irradiation of hypofractionated radiotherapy with immunotherapy like pembrolizumab and bevacizumab could be studied, and has been performed in a phase 1 and then phase 2 studies. The phase 1 have been recently published in Neuro-Oncol last year. You can see here the design of the trial. So this time it was 5 fraction of 6 gray, so 30 gray in total every day, so during 5 days, combined with bevacizumab and pembrolizumab, bevacizumab given then every 2 weeks, and pembrolizumab every 3 weeks until relapse. Again, as you can see here, this phase 1, it was a mixed population because it was not only glioblastoma, but grade 3 and grade 4 gliomas, and also heterogeneity in the population because there were recurrent BEVA naive or BEVA resistant gliomas. You can see here the different population. The main population were BEVA naive glioma, and very few BEVA resistant. And you can see here the result of this phase 1 with a good tolerance of the association, and also mostly in the BEVA naive population, median overall survival of 13 months compared to 8 months for the BEVA resistant, and a median PFS of 8 months compared to 6 months for the BEVA resistant population. Interestingly, and we know that glioma are cold tumor, and you can see here that the expression of PD-L1 was pretty low in all the tumors. Sorry. For our part, we designed also a phase 1/2 trial, STERIMGLI trial. So for only recurrent glioblastoma, associating 3 fraction of 8 grays, as you can see here, combined with the anti-PD-L1 durvalumab, starting at the last fraction and then every month until relapse. So we presented some result of the phase 1 at the ASCO 2 years ago and EANO meeting, and currently we are at the half inclusion of the patient in the national phase 2. This clinical trial is also associated with a study, national study on the different factors predicting the efficacy of such combination of radiation and immunotherapy. You can see here the population of the phase 1 patients. So 6 patients were included, half methylated, half unmethylated. And interestingly, this association was well tolerated. We got only 1 DLT, which was due to durvalumab with a vestibular neuritis. We got 2 pseudo-progression for the patient 4 and 5. Interestingly, you see that the patient 5 who got the DLT had the longest PFS compared to the other patient. And the 2 patients who got the longest PFS, as you can see here, also were the 2 patients with pseudo-progression, and also the 2 patients with a normal lymphocyte count starting at the inclusion in the trial, so starting the treatment. So beside this clinical trial, we, as I told you before, we study biomarker of biological marker, but also of imaging. We perform radiomic studies on MRI, and I show you here some study of radiomic feature variation in the flare of the patient that we have re-radiate. And as you can see here, and the total study has been published and submitted to the EANO meeting this year by Gauthier Glemarec. We can discriminate the patient 5, which is totally different in the radiomic feature, and the patient who got the highest PFS and also the DLT. So when you re-radiate a patient, and if you associate this re-radiation with immunotherapy, for instance, the question is how to evaluate this patient, RANO versus CIRANO criteria. Of course, you expect much pseudo-progression for this patient. You can see here an example of pseudo-progression after combining SRS and immunotherapy. You have an increase here of contrast enhancement, which is going to be stabilized after in the follow-up of the patient. And you see that this contrast enhancement was not perfused on a perfusion sequence. So it's very important to help the clinician to follow the patient with multimodal imaging to be able to discriminate progression from pseudo-progression. And our first analysis of the patient that we include our trial clearly showed that, of course, the 6 months local control according to Irano criteria are much better than with Rano criteria, so confirming the importance to use Irano criteria, but also to combine multimodal imaging in the follow-up of the patient. So the next question to optimize such re-radiation now, it's also to perfectly target the small volumes that we are going to irradiate using stereotactic irradiation, because we don't take any margin, so we don't have to miss the right target. So for that, we have maybe to also associate a better definition using a biological target volume. So using multimodal imaging, the first one is to try to study the MRI spectroscopy. As you know, using MRI spectroscopy, you can look at different metabolites like choline, creatine, lipid, lactate, and other metabolites. And we know since several years now that the ratio of choline on NAA above 2, what we call CNI2, is predictive of the site of relapse after glioblastoma treatment. And you see in this study that has been published now 17 years ago, that in recurrent glioblastoma treated by SRS, you see here that the patient who present the CNI2 positive voxel in the target, in the GTV, have a higher overall survival compared to the patient who presents the CNI2 positive voxel outside the GTV that was irradiated. So probably we need to associate metabolic imaging for better delineating our volume to re-irradiate in association with the standard MRI. Another way to study the metabolic imaging, it's also the PET, and particularly the FET PET. That is also a very interesting study published 2 years ago, showing and comparing the ADC, the diffusion, compared to the FET PET, and clearly showing that the FET PET does much better than the diffusion. The diffusion correlate poorly with later glioblastoma recurrence. So because of these results, and you know, there is a phase 2 clinical trial comparing in glioblastoma re-irradiation, comparing delineation of the GTV defined by FET-TEP versus the standard MRI. Another question is re-irradiation, yes, but for who? Is there a predictive score which will help us to select the right patient to re-irradiate? So as you know, the team of Stephanie Coombs have published several publications on such scores. They have optimized and performed a new prognostic value, a new score that has been published 2 years ago now. And they consider, as you can see here, the primary histology, age, time from primary radiotherapy to re-irradiation, the KPS, tumor volume, and the resection performed or not before re-irradiation. And as you can see here, using this new score, they can discriminate different population, of course, of patients with different median overall survival after re-irradiation from 6 to 17 months. So you can see that we can maybe use this kind of score to better select our patient that we want to re-irradiate. Another question is there, beside histology, is it also an implication of the dose or the anatomical localization for the patient as markers of good or bad response to re-irradiation? And for that, we asked this question, and we published this study 2 years ago. Now we looked at different population of patients that we re-irradiate, high-grade glioma and ependymoma, also only one with low-grade glioma. And as you can see here, we wanted to see if there was an involvement of the effect of the localization or the tumor in contact or not to the subventricular zone, and also an effect of the dose. In univariate analysis, we saw that yes, there was an impact of a worse impact of the contact to the SVZ, and a better impact when the equivalent dose was above 76 gray. But in multivariate analysis, we showed that only the contact to the SVZ was a bad prognostic factor for the response to reirradiation. So maybe it's not a good indication to propose a reirradiation to the patient when the recurrence is in contact to the ventricle. And to finish, of course, we now have to predict, is it a possibility to predict and evaluate our patients that we reirradiate? And for that, we can use RadioMix. As I told you before, we can use RadioMix on MRI, and I show you that only in 6 patients, the phase 1, we are able to discriminate the patient with the best response after irradiation. And in the future, entropy is very important and an important factor to consider. Entropy, as you know, is a witness of heterogeneity. And as you can see here, for the patient 5, after irradiation and immunotherapy, we have a decrease of the entropies, of a tendency to an homogenization of the tumor, and in the contrary to the other patient who didn't get the same response after reirradiation and immunotherapy. And interestingly, when we looked at the patient 5 until relapse, we see that after normalization of this heterogeneity, so a decrease of the entropy, there is a slight increase of the entropy again until relapse. And you see that the start of the increase of the entropy starts before the date of relapse according to Irano criteria. So I think that RadioMix should be studied in a lot of patients in such condition to being able maybe to discriminate progression from pseudo-progression, but also to discriminate the patient who will benefit or not to this treatment. RadioMix can be also performed on TEP, as you can see on this very recent publication, a very interesting publication, looking also at entropy and other features, this time on the TEP FET, and which were also able to discriminate 2 populations of patients, one with presenting a local recurrence, and the other patient presenting a distant recurrence with a totally different feature of RadioMix on this TEP FET. So, as a conclusion, reirradiation of glioblastoma, yes, it's a good option, maybe not for all the patients. It's well tolerated. We can do it, of course, using photon and also proton. To optimize this reirradiation, we probably have to associate this reirradiation with targeted drugs directed against biological radioresistant pathway as Avastin or other targeted drugs, probably immunotherapy. But if we want to optimize this reirradiation, we have to better define the right target, what is the best imaging for our delineation of this small volume to take into account the tumor heterogeneity. So what metabolic imaging do we have to integrate to better define our target? And then what is the best imaging for evaluation? Do we have to use RadioMix? And I think to conclude that if we want to combine everything and to predict the patient that we have to select for such treatment, we have to perform artificial intelligence studies combining RadioMix and biomarkers to better define the right population to reirradiate. So I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. There's one very short question in the chat: cumulative doses to the brain. I guess that's a concern about neurotoxicity, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, but that's why, yes, there are several publications that show that you can accumulate dose until 100 gray that we perform regularly, but on small volume. That's why I think that, and you can see it on in the different clinical trials, that when we decide to re-irradiate, it works when the target are small, less than 3 centimeters, and that you can increase the dose with three fraction of 8 or 9 or 10 grays. Yeah.
Thank you. So just as a reminder for the audience, right, that you can put your questions into the chat, and then we will look at them, and we can also ask questions to Elisabeth later on. Elisabeth, one question from my side that, of course, is inevitable. I mean, you're a radiation oncologist, you like what you're doing. Re-radiation is done all over the world in the absence of a single controlled trial that it matters. The only trial that was shown at SNO last year, it was the trial with BEV versus BEV alone, and showed only a PFS effect, but no OS effect. Does that change your mind, or have the trials not been done the right way, or what is your view on that? How do you justify what you're doing? And Stephen Price is going to get the same question afterwards.
Yes, there's not a lot of trial. I agree with you, Michael, on and studies showing an increase of overall survival. But that's why I think that we have to do more studies, and I think that that's why we have to also, maybe I think that with the combination maybe of immunotherapy for some population, I think that we will be able to increase overall survival, but for maybe a small population of patients. And that's why I think that we need to be able to select the right population and not to propose to everybody such re-irradiation. And maybe I think that's why if we propose the re-irradiation to everybody with big tumors near the SVZ, with a time of recurrence between the end of the STUP protocol, for instance, and our re-irradiation, if this time is too short, I think that they are not good patient to include in such studies. That's why I think we don't reach a very good increase of overall survival. We have to better select our patients.
And then maybe one more question before we move on. Comment on protons in recurrent glioblastoma from your perspective.
Protons?
Yeah.
That's a question? Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah. If you have protons, I think that of course you will, because of the ballistic of protons, spare more normal tissue. But it's true if you have not proton, and you can see that there is an example in my last slide, you can perfectly do a very good re-irradiation with stereotactic irradiation. With the techniques that we have with photon now, we can do a very good re-irradiation if you don't have protons. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.